Part 9. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 81. As the entire Alpha City sank under the sea, this apocalyptic scene finally completely disappeared, and the black fog and firelight no longer existed. In Ian's vision, only the ink-stained black sea surface and a sky obscured by leaden clouds. The equatorial diameter of Alpha Star is very close to that of the Earth. If the data on the Earth is used, Ian's sight can see things up to 10 nautical miles away, and the Pioneer's distance from the nearest coast or island is definitely more than this value. It is basically impossible to find the Sea Pioneer with your eyes. Lan concluded that if he wanted to contact the icebreaker, he had only two ways. One was to light a fire at a high place and use the thick smoke as a distress signal, whether it was the Pioneer, other ships, or air vehicles. Regardless of the ship, as long as he can pay attention to the distress signal, he can be saved. The second method is to find a way to repair the communication device on his body, and then make a signal amplifier to search for the nearest human base station and send a radio distress signal. But both methods have flaws and problems. To make a fire, first he has to find enough combustible materials, and this task is obviously not easy in this barren land with only rocks and sand. Secondly, it towers into the clouds. Not only humans can see the plume of smoke, but indigenous creatures are also attracted to it. If it attracts some dangerous predators, it will not be easy for Lan to protect himself with just the self-defense equipment on Lan. As for radio distress calls, there was also a lack of materials and tools, and he had no idea why the equipment malfunctioned. Logically speaking, if there is something strange in that sea area, now that he has arrived on land, these equipment should return to normal. But in addition to sonar, cameras, and some purely mechanical equipment, most electronic equipment still in a paralyzed state. Without even a screwdriver, it would be impossible to repair these precision instruments. I didn't expect the plot to turn into a desert island survival. Lan sighed and continued walking along the coastline. On the other side of the coastal bedrock, close to the land, is an equally desolate Gobi desert, with nothing but stones and sand. Lan decided to search the beach first. If nothing was found, he would then go deep into the Gobi desert to try his luck. If this is not an island, but part of the mainland, then stretching tens of thousands of kilometers back is an uninhabited area that is rarely touched by humans. Except for the only human port in the surrounding area of Zhonghai, no other the transfer station. Even the exiles rarely come here. The seawater in Zhonghai contains a huge amount of radiation. It is like a huge radioactive source, and the radiation concentration in the surrounding areas is also terrifyingly high. It is simply not suitable for long-term settlement by humans. After walking for almost 2 or 3 kilometers, Lan finally made something different, a human remains. This is a mummy, but it is not the kind that is parasitized by flesh-eating worms and then sucks out the flesh and blood. It is a naturally weathered mummy. Although it is at the seaside, due to air currents, the environment above the bedrock is very dry. Coupled with the abnormally high dose of radiation, the body has been completely dehydrated before the microorganisms attached to the body can start to enjoy this feast. It turned into something like a mummy. The corpse was wearing a tattered standard armor and was kneeling on a rock facing the sea. A rusty bullpup automatic rifle was placed at its feet. There are no fatal injuries on the body, however, there are signs of severe ulceration on the skin. He most likely died of acute radiation sickness. Lan walked around the body, then squatted down and picked up the rifle. This is an old rifle. According to the inscription on the gun, the model should be called AUG S900 assault rifle. It uses 5.56 mm caliber bullets. The severely aged plastic stock is covered with cracks. This is a weapons manufactured using firearms technology from the old era had been discontinued before the Type 01 rifle was officially put into service. This guy, is he the first group of exploration troops? It was only when the Ark had just landed on planet Alpha that the field troops would use this antique from the old era. Kaylan took off the dog tag hanging from the body's neck. On the front of the dog tag was written the name of the deceased and the unit he belonged to, Wood Collins, 1st Reconnaissance Team of the 3rd Armored Mixed Brigade, Staff Sergeant. The 3rd Armored Mixed Brigade. Kaylan repeated the number of this unit. He had never heard of the number of this unit. When humans first arrived on Alpha Planet, there was only a war with indigenous creatures. It took 4 years to clean up the surrounding area of the landing point. During these 4 years, countless troop numbers and temporary numbers were written off, newly built, and rebuilt, such as the 3rd Armored Mixed Brigade. A featureless number is really hard to leave a deep impression on people. Kaylan turned the dog tag over, and on the back he saw a quite famous emblem, an eagle holding a rifle and a trident. Under the emblem, there was an English inscription, which translated means, "The good times were only yesterday." This emblem and inscription both come from an American Special Forces unit called the SEALs in the old era. However, after the destruction of the Earth, the name of this unit disappeared with the end of the old era. It seems now, this 3rd Armored Brigade should be the direct descendant of this special force. In this case, they can definitely be called elite. The missions carried out by this elite unit are most likely to be classified. With Ian's authority, it is definitely impossible to check. The answer to why this body appears here can only be found in the central archives of the Army. This armor should be land combat equipment, so it can be ruled out that it arrived here by water. The bullets in the magazine are all full, so it should not have been encountered in battle. If it is in the backpack, there are still unopened ones. Compressed military rations, huh? This is the first generation of anti-radiation nin. Kaylan was a little surprised when he opened the medicine bottle. There were still more than half of the pills in the bottle, nearly 100 pills. Although the efficacy of the first generation of antiradin is not as good as the improved version that Kaylan took, it still has some effects. It's just that the dosage is larger and the side effects are slightly more obvious. But this Sergeant Collins backpack, there are almost 100 tablets of antiradianin in it. There is no reason for him not to take it. Kaylan checked the body again. There were no external injuries. Apart from the characteristics of acute radiation sickness, no other factors of death were found. The unopened food also showed that the person was not starved to death. So why did he give up treatment? Could it be that he made this choice out of desperation because he knew that he could not wait for rescue? Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi San. Chapter 82. Based on Ian's understanding of this unit, the word give up has never been mentioned in the SEAL dictionary. The training these soldiers have undergone is enough to allow them to face hell. Even if the enemy is a demon from the abyss, they will also pull the trigger without hesitation. The ammunition is not exhausted, the food is not exhausted, and he has not even encountered a battle. What is the reason that drives him to give up the desire to survive? The combination of the instinct to survive and the will of a soldier can't resist the despair. What happened to this non-commissioned officer named Collins? Kaylan searched the contents of the body again. In addition to some standard wilderness survival supplies, he also found a damaged walkie-talkie, a photo and a paper mission log. The material of the photo is a kind of photosensitive plastic photo paper that has been eliminated long ago. Due to aging, the entire photo has turned completely white, and it is impossible to see what was originally taken. Kaylan could only put the photo aside and open the mission log. Many pages had been torn out of the diary, leaving less than half of its thickness. The yellowed pages were filled with scrawled lines, and some pages were even penetrated by the pen tip due to excessive force. The leaked ink smudged on the paper, forming a black patch the size of an old era coin. Kaylan flipped through page after page, and the content of each page was similar. Collins seemed to be just venting. Kaylan could even imagine the other person holding the pen tightly, gritting his teeth, and writing anxiously on the paper. The look of scribbling. These lines have no rules and no beauty at all. Kaylan tried to compare them with the coastline, but he couldn't get it right. Not code words, not maps, they are nothing, they contain no information, at least that's what it seems for now. It was not until page 15 that a line of text finally appeared. I am sorry. Sorry. Why did he say sorry? Who is he saying sorry to? Although the content finally appeared that Kaylan could understand, such a meaningless apology made him feel even more confused. Presumably, Sergeant Collins must have had some mental problems during the last period of his life, but what exactly caused him to become like this? Kaylan could only continue to turn back, but after this sorry sentence, there were several blank pages. Finally, on page 22, some valuable information appeared again. This is a simple drawing. It is a long object that looks like a stick, and on one end of the stick, there is an eye. One eye? Kaylan took a deep breath. This was not a stick, but a stone pillar, the same stone pillar he saw under the sea. That stone pillar with a giant eye carved on the top. Those stone pillars are everywhere in that underwater city, and they have never appeared in the Alpha ruins elsewhere. Collins has also seen such stone pillars. Like himself, he has also been to that place. Ian's breathing quickened slightly. No, this isn't right. Kaylan glanced at Collins' body and shook his head vigorously. The equipment worn by the corpses were all land warfare equipment. Without equipment such as deep diving suits, it would be impossible to reach the underwater city. 100 meters is not too deep, but it is deadly enough for humans without equipment to protect them. In Collins' time, biochemically modified people had not yet received official written approval and could not join the army. To put it bluntly, even if Collins is a one-of-a-kind diver, he doesn't even have a fully enclosed waterproof suit. The poison in the sea water alone can easily kill him. It is difficult to find 1 in 100,000 people with a special physique like Liao Zilang's. What's more, if this Collins can be immune to the toxicity and radiation in seawater like Liao Zilang, his skin surface will not have these radiation diseases. Festering sores. It's impossible for him to have been to the undersea city, at least, he can't have come here from the undersea city. Even Kaylan began to become a little incoherent, and his head was simply a mess. Paste. Nothing can be explained by common sense, damn it, even a normal person has to be driven into a lunatic. He curled his lips helplessly and continued to read back. Blank, blank, scribbling lines, blank, a page full of circles, scribbling lines, blank, still blank. Finally, the mission log was turned to the last page, and when Kaylan saw clearly what was on the last page when he wrote something, his whole body couldn't help but trembled slightly. Leave the bed. This is not the first time he has seen this text. The last time was on the inside of the shell of the salvage diving cabin on the Pioneer. Exactly the same content. Is this really a warning from the dead? Kaylan fell into deep thought. Off the seabed? First of all, he has not reached the seabed. The undersea city was built on the undersea plateau. Strictly speaking, it is not the seabed. As for the abyss hatchery, although it is very deep, it has definitely not hit the bottom yet. Otherwise, Ian's deep diving suit would not be able to withstand the water pressure at that depth on the seabed. Or does this bed not refer to the seabed? If you use Chinese, it will definitely be much easier to understand. Kaylan tried hard to recall the several meanings of the word bed in Chinese: bed, seabed or river bed, flower bed or nursery, etc. In addition to being a noun, this word can also be used as a verb, meaning to sleep, place, embed or plant. Huh? Plant, seeds. Kaylan suddenly recalled that in the exile settlement, the apostle of the prophet uttered a mantra-like sentence in Alpha language before turning into a seed of erosion: I would like to dedicate my body as a hotbed, let the seeds of erosion awaken and sprout. Hotbed. This is what this bed means. Kaylan was startled, and he immediately realized that this warning told him to stay away from the hatchery under the abyss. There is an out-of-control fusion entrenched there, which is unimaginably dangerous. If it is aroused, it will be an unimaginable disaster for humans. But, it still doesn't seem right. Kaylan bit his lip and rubbed his fingers on the crumpled page. No matter from any angle, the explanation just now was flawless, but subconsciously he felt that something was wrong. Assume that he, as for Collins, after seeing the terrifying monster in the hatchery, would he leave such a warning? Leave the bed, away from the hatchery. No, if it were him, he would definitely write it differently: a monster in the bed, a big monster entrenched in the hatchery. Leaving aside who left the warning in the diving cabin, Collins obviously had enough time when he wrote this paragraph, so why didn't he write it more clearly? Or is it that Kaylan misunderstood from the beginning? This sentence is not a warning at all. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 83. Kaylan only felt that a lot of plausible clues were tangled together in his mind, like a ball of yarn with no thread. He wanted to analyze it, but he couldn't find a place to start. Every clue seems to point to the city on the bottom of the sea, but for that city, the information currently available is basically zero. As for the hatchery that Kaylan accidentally entered, it is even more covered by heavy fog. What happened to the advance agents of the Security Bureau? What happened to these Exploration Force soldiers decades ago, and what happened to me when I was in a coma? As long as these three things can be understood, many problems can be solved, but the problem is, the dead can't speak, and the unconscious person is not much different from the dead. Stuffing Collins's mission log and the blank photo into his pocket, Kaylan took away the bottle of anti-radiation medicine that had expired for a long time, and continued along the coastline, wanting to understand the situation of the place he was in, and finally the best way is to find a place that is high enough. However, Kaylan's field of vision is filled with endless desolate Gobi Desert. There is not even anything that can be used as a marker. If he walks inward, he will easily lose his way. The light from the star fell through the layers of clouds, forming a faint shadow under Kaylan's body. Kaylan's watch was also broken, but at least more than a month had passed since he woke up. 4 hours, the angle of the shadow has never changed. Trying to rely on the shadow to determine the direction is completely unworkable in this weird place. Why does it always seem to be noon? It's impossible to have a daylight phenomenon in this place, right? Kaylan looked up at the sky and murmured to himself. The compass failed, the positioning device failed, and there were no plants in this place. None of the conventional methods of direction identification worked. The coast, the Gobi Desert, the vertical distance is at least 20 kilometers, and the horizontal distance is unknown, but it will only be greater than 20 kilometers. Kaylan tried his best to recall the Alpha Star topographic map he had seen, but in his impression, there seemed to be no such large Gobi Desert in the coastal areas of China. First of all, we can exclude the north coast. About 1/3 of the northernmost sea area of the Central Sea is a permanently frozen area. Thousands of kilometers of glaciers extend to the land. The thick ice surface cannot even be broken by the collision angle of the Pioneer. The south bank is also unlikely. It is the largest swamp on the entire Alpha planet, and is home to a large number of dangerous indigenous creatures. For this swamp area, human exploration progress is less than 5%. As for the West Bank and the East Bank, although the environment is not as extreme as the North and South, it is still a undulating hilly area. If such a large area of wilderness is embedded in the middle, it will be very conspicuous on the map, but I have seen it in Kaylan. There is no such embedded wasteland on any map. And, judging from the distance between the Pioneer's anchor point and the coast, Kaylan has no chance of reaching any coast in just a few hours relying on the current, not even the nearest west coast. Kaylan estimated that he had probably drifted to a deserted island. After walking for about 20 minutes, a second human remains appeared in Ian's field of vision, but compared to Sergeant Collins, the appearance of this remains was more horrifying. All the limbs of this remains had been removed. When he fell down, a half-meter-long stalagmite penetrated his chest and nailed his torso to the ground. The top of the stalagmite was covered with an old-style tactical helmet. This scene was familiar to Kaylan. Many soldiers who died outside and whose bodies could not be cremated or transported back to the Ark were usually buried on the spot. A simple tombstone looks like this, a wooden board or a stone pillar. If you don't have one, you can stick a gun in the ground instead, then cover it with the deceased's helmet, and carve the deceased's name and date of death on the side of the helmet, as well as information such as the unit to which it belongs. But the body exposed in the wilderness before him could not be buried at all. Instead, the tombstone nailed the body to the ground. This behavior seemed to be done by the enemy of the deceased. I feel a bit unwell today, so I went to bed early. This chapter is a bit short. I hope you can understand it. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 84. Judging from the clothing and equipment, this remains should belong to the same unit as Sergeant Collins, but compared with Collins, his death was simply horrific. It looked like he had been subjected to a famous torture method from the old era car cracked. However, after a rough inspection of the remains, most of Ian's doubts about this were dispelled. There was a certain degree of abnormality at the ends of the limbs of the remains. A large number of fleshy tentacles emerged from the gaps in the muscles. When they grow, some of them wrap around blood vessels and nerves, and some penetrate the skin and extend outside the body. It is not difficult for Kaylan to imagine that if this situation is allowed to develop, then this arm will definitely also becoming just like Yvonne. All human tissues except bones were replaced by a large group of tangled tentacles. The degree of alienation of the soldier is not as serious as that of Yvonne, but it is only a matter of time. In the absence of any means of suppression, cutting off the limbs is the only way to prevent the mutation from spreading to the torso. However, there are not enough medical conditions on this desert island. Even if the limbs are successfully amputated, the infected soldier it is also difficult to survive more than 24 hours. Their movements are still a little slow. On the sectioned surface of the torso, Kaylan found a small number of tiny tentacles sprouting out like granules. These tentacles were less than half a centimeter in length and not much thicker than a hair in diameter, but this meant that the alienated cells had invaded into the torso of the infected person. Before that, when Kaylan removed Ivan's infected part, there was no abnormality at the incision, but even then, cells that could not be detected by the naked eye still spread into his body. The cells of the erosion seed are like viruses, spreading at an unimaginable speed. Unless the contact part is cut off as soon as possible after direct contact, mutations will soon appear in various places throughout the body. At that time, it's too late to cut off the strong man's wrist. However, looking at the condition of this remains, it seems that the mutation phenomenon stopped after the death of the host. Not only the torso, but also the amputated limbs still retain most of the human body tissues. After a human dies, tissue cells will die within a few hours due to lack of oxygen supply. The inactivated cells cannot be assimilated by the erosion seeds, so the progress of the mutation is stopped. That's not right. Even if the human cells die, the cells of the erosion seed will actively steal oxygen and nutrients from the outside world. Even if it does not occupy the host's entire body, it should be peeled off from the host as a new individual. Instead of being buried with the host, could it be because Ian's eyes fell on the stalagmite that pierced the torso of the remains? The piercing point of this stalagmite was not randomly selected, but penetrated exactly where the heart was. At first, Kaylan thought it was to end the suffering of the infected as soon as possible, but now it seems that things are not that simple. He pulled out a dagger, cut open the remains chest along the puncture point of the stalagmite, and then pried it hard. With the crisp sound of broken ribs, the entire chest was directly exposed to his eyes. The heart penetrated by the stalagmite was abnormally enlarged. Even in a dehydrated and shrunken state, it was about 4 times larger than a normal human heart, occupying almost half of the chest space. Is this the mutated heart? Logically speaking, the more developed the heart muscles of a creature, the stronger the creature's ability to exercise, but the problem is that the abnormally large heart in front of us can no longer be said to be strong. It is a pathological enlargement. When it grows to this size, not only will the function of the heart itself be affected, but it will also compress other organs in the chest. There is only one result, and that is death. It looks like a tumor. Kaylan looked at the heart carefully, his eyes scanning the wrinkled capsule on the outside of the heart. It seems like there is really a foreign body inside. Naturally, this foreign body cannot refer to a tumor. The incidence rate of cardiac tumors is extremely low, and malignant tumors that can proliferate indefinitely are even rarer. Moreover, these soldiers will undergo a full physical examination before each mission. If the tumor existed, it would have been discovered long ago. It should be that the cells of the eroded seed have invaded. Kaylan thought about it for a moment, and it seemed that Ivan's heart had not yet undergone such changes. He carefully inserted the tip of the dagger, but the penetration depth was less than 2 centimeters, and the tip of the dagger came into contact with a hard object, making it difficult to advance even half an inch. There is indeed something. Kaylan cut open the heart capsule along the piercing position. Suddenly, a translucent egg-shaped object was revealed. It had a hard and smooth shell. The dagger Kaylan had just pierced was covered by this. The layer of shell blocked it. Through the light yellow translucent shell, you can vaguely see that it is covered with purple blood vessels. These blood vessels are wrapped with milky white nerve fibers, and around the periphery of the egg-shaped object, there are many shriveled and withered fleshy tentacles attached. And that stalagmite just pierced this thing. For Kaylan, this egg-shaped object is no stranger. He had already seen it once when he killed the first erosion seed. Not long ago, at the bottom of the abyss hatchery, those in the eggshell, each of the larvae that develops inside also has one of these things in their bodies. This thing is the heart of the seed of corrosion, what is called the core in the message left by the alphas. It turns out that crushing the nuclear can also kill the corrosion seeds. As long as this person can be replaced with an artificial heart, he might still be able to live. Thinking of this, Kaylan was suddenly startled. If I could replace it with an artificial heart. If the nucleus in Ivan's body is found, it should be possible to kill those mutated tissue cells without getting the flesh-eating worms, right? However, Ivan's heart did not undergo this degree of mutation. Is it because the erosion seed cells in his body have not yet developed a nucleus? Or is it that not all nuclei are generated at the heart? The corrosion seed in the exile settlement was taken away by DOS agents. This time, another nearly complete core appeared in front of Kaylan. Naturally, he wanted to study it carefully, but just when he pulled out the stalagmite, a sudden change occurred. The punctured core recovered almost instantly. The blood vessels in the core beat as powerfully as a heart, pumping the black and red viscous plasma into the tentacles connected to the core. These originally dry and withered tentacles suddenly became plump and began to grow rapidly. It is resurrected. Congratulations to the protagonist for successfully committing suicide. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 85. Kaylan quickly retreated and distanced himself from the resurrected seed of corrosion. I've been dead for decades, I'm still not dead yet. Kaylan never expected that such an accident would happen. This was never mentioned in the information left by Alpha Civilization. Even if the corrosion seed has strong physical resistance to attack and regeneration, once the core is destroyed, it will die immediately. This has been confirmed in hundreds of experiments conducted by the Alpha people, and there is no special one. Situation occurs. For the seed of erosion, the core is equivalent to the combination of the heart and the brain, and is an absolutely critical part. Those experiments, of course, also included attempts to pierce the core with foreign objects, but in those attempts, even after the piercing objects were removed, the corrosive seeds of death were not resurrected. But why this time? No, the same? Could it be that after merging with human genes, the cells of the seed of erosion experienced secondary mutations? But even human genes cannot bring such strong vitality to the erosion seed. If it is said that it is fused with cockroaches on the earth, the credibility may be even higher. I'm really out of luck now. Kaylan stared at the wriggling tentacles, thinking crazily about countermeasures. Without the nemesis of flesh-eating worms, relying only on human means, how can we kill the seed of corrosion? In just a few seconds, the penetrated core was wrapped in dozens of tentacles as thick as an arm. Many holes were opened on the surface of these new tentacles. These holes were like mouths, greedy. The ground bit and devoured corpses that had been dried for decades. Even the tentacles on the severed limbs that had withered completely were not spared. Kaylan could clearly feel that it was thirsty for food, and it would not let go of any organic matter that could be converted into nutrients. After eating the soldier's remains completely, the only living thing around was, naturally, only Kaylan is left. What a shame. Seeing the two tentacles being drawn towards him, Kaylan rolled on the spot and managed to hide. Then he drew out his pistol, pointed it at the corrosion seed's body not far away and pulled the trigger. Bah! 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 The other equipment on his body has long been lost in the deep sea. This large caliber pistol is Ian's only self-defense weapon. The 0.5-inch explosive shell specially modified by Leighton can attack even an indigenous creature as big as a snow dragon. It poses quite a threat, but if it hits the tentacles of the seed of corrosion, even the outermost layer of skin cannot be penetrated, let alone the heavily protected core. Kaylan suddenly felt that what Hound said was quite reasonable. Weapons are the most useful things on Alpha Planet, and also the most useless things. Problems that can be solved with weapons are not problems, but in the face of real problems, human conventional weapons are almost useless. Kaylan started to retreat while shooting at the seed of corrosion, but he didn't know how fast the seed of corrosion moved. If he chose to escape, could he escape? Just as he was thinking this, the corrosion seed suddenly jumped up from the ground, jumped out 5 or 6 meters, and came to his right side, and several tentacles swept over again. Hiss, it really doesn't work. The way this thing moves is not by running at all, but by relying on the instantaneous force of its tentacles to bounce. One jump is equivalent to Ian's distance of several steps, and the 5 or 6 meters is obviously not its limit. If it wants to go all out, and if so, I'm afraid the jumping distance can reach 20 meters. It can't run, even if it's wearing high mobility power armor, it can't run away from this thing. Kaylan could only retreat slowly. He didn't even dare to retreat too fast, for fear that the erosion would lose patience and pounce on him. For Kaylan, even contact would be fatal. If a virus-like cell invades, even if the corrosive species in front of him gives up chasing him, he will eventually turn into an identical monster. That's no different than being killed by a seed of erosion. The seed of corrosion is still testing, and it only uses 2 or 3 tentacles in each attack. For Kaylan, this level of attack can barely be dealt with, but once the test is over, the seed of corrosion will use nearly 100 tentacles all over its body. If the tentacles attack together, Kaylan will be stabbed into a bloody human-shaped honeycomb in less than a second. With every second that passes, Kaylan is one step closer to death. This is completely different from the situation in the Abyss hatchery, where, with the trump card in his hand, he at least has a glimmer of hope, but now, he has what's in it? A pistol that is completely invulnerable to corrosive seeds, and is even about to be empty of bullets in the magazine? Or the dagger stuck in the boot that even makes it difficult to dissect a mummy? Or maybe the stalagmite in my hand? Etc. There seems to be something wrong with this stalagmite. Kaylan noticed that the attacks of the seed of erosion were basically aimed at the right half of his body. Whenever he adjusted his face, the seed of erosion would move clockwise with him as the center. At first, Kaylan thought it was because he was holding a gun in his right hand, but when he thought about it, this gun posed no threat to the seed of corrosion at all, and there was no need for it to use the hand holding the gun as its primary target. It was avoiding the stalagmite held in its left hand. This stalagmite held it against the ground for decades. During these decades, the seeds of erosion could not be resurrected. But as soon as Kaylan pulled out the stalagmite, the thing came back to life. This is so obvious. There is definitely something weird about this stalagmite. The seeds of corrosion are afraid of it. Kaylan immediately raised the stalagmite in his hand and pointed it at the seed of erosion. The next second, the seed of erosion actually took a step back. More than a dozen tentacles tensed up, ready to go. It seemed to be extremely powerful. I'm afraid of Ian's appearance. No. It's not me it's afraid of, it's the thing in my hand. Kaylan glanced at the stalagmite in his hand. This stalagmite was light gray in color and rough in texture. It looked like ordinary limestone and weighed about the same. If there was anything special about it, it probably only had those scaly textures on the surface. Generally stalagmites are deposited from calcium carbonate dissolved in water. The surface textures are roughly in the shape of annual rings. Rows of rows like this are really rare. By the way, since there are things like stalagmites, does that mean there is still a cave on this desert island? If there were a large number of such stalagmites in the cave, it would be an excellent shelter. Just such a stalagmite would make the seed of erosion fear like this. If the cave was full, the seed of erosion would definitely be able to hide far away. But the question is, where the hell is this cave? I have been feeling a little unwell these past few days, and my bones occasionally feel sore. I don't know if it's a psychological effect or something else. In short, I feel a little anxious. I decided to go to the hospital for a review tomorrow. A blood draw will help me feel more at ease. To be honest, I am really afraid of death. The chance of recurrence is like a time bomb. I don't know when it will explode. It may be the next second, or it may not explode in my lifetime. In short, I hope everyone takes good care of their bodies and don't regret it when they fall ill. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 86. As we all know, the most important condition for the formation of caves is that the area must have abundant underground water resources. However, this Gobi Desert is a completely barren land with not even a little vegetation, so how could there be so much? What about groundwater sufficient to form karst landforms? This stalagmite, couldn't it be something from this desert island at all? Kaylan held the stalagmite in a sword-like posture, confronting the erosion seed more than 10 steps away. Judging from the monster's fear of the stalagmite, this thing could indeed be regarded as its nemesis. Although Kaylan had no idea what the principle behind it was at least useful, and that was enough. But just one stalagmite is still too little. If the tentacles of the seed of corrosion attack from multiple angles, Kaylan will not be able to parry them all. If Asano Akira is here, with this stalagmite, maybe we can still fight the seed of corrosion in a reciprocal manner. As for taking the initiative to attack, Kaylan has no idea. If you want to use stalagmites to kill, or seal the erosion seed, you must come into contact with the core protected by numerous tentacles. However, these tentacles cannot even penetrate explosive bombs and explode with gunpowder. Compared with the kinetic energy generated by Ian's wrists and arms, there is still a big gap in the power that Kaylan can produce. Even if this stalagmite is replaced with a real sword, he will not be able to stab the core with the sword. Location. The situation is so frozen. Kaylan noticed that after taking out the stalagmite, the seed of corrosion had not launched an attack, and it had even given up trying. Just as Kaylan did not dare to let the seed of corrosion touch him, the seed of corrosion seemed not to be able to touch him. Dare to let this stalagmite touch you. The cells of flesh-eating worms are highly toxic to erosion seeds. Will this stalagmite have a similar effect? Kaylan thought this way and took a bold step closer to the seed of corrosion. His current posture is very much like that of a fencer, with his legs spread apart and stable on horseback, and his upper body leaning forward as much as possible. At the same time, he holds the tail end of the stalagmite with his right hand and thrusts the stalagmite towards one of the tentacles of the seed of erosion. Babble. The moment the stalagmites came into contact with the tentacles, the seed of erosion let out a shrill scream like a baby crying. Then, with the help of the power of the tentacles, it quickly bounced back and met Kaylan. The distance between them suddenly widened to more than 30 meters. The tentacle touched by the stalagmite was scorched black, the surrounding tissue was severely necrotic, and there was even a wisp of green smoke rising. Kaylan looked at the stalagmite in his hand with incredulous eyes. It was obviously an ordinary limestone, but after touching the erosion seed, it produced an effect similar to strong acid burning. Even the tissue cells of flesh-eating worms, which are highly toxic to erosion seeds, have no such immediate effect. No wonder this monster is so afraid of this stalagmite, but what makes Kaylan a little puzzled is, if this stalagmite has such obvious lethality against erosion seeds, why is its core nailed to the ground for decades? Failed to completely kill this corrosive species? Shouldn't this thing be classified as a non-lethal weapon? Before Kaylan could come to his senses, the seed of corrosion suddenly formed into a ball and fled. The speed of this rolling movement was simply astonishing. In less than a minute, the seed of corrosion completely disappeared. In Ian's field of vision. This thing is too cowardly. Kaylan stared speechlessly at the direction in which the seed of corrosion was escaping. It's just less courageous than an old dog. Kaylan took a long breath. In any case, at least the threat to his life was relieved for the time being. Huh? Is this, the relic of that soldier? Kaylan saw a palm-sized bag lying on the ground. The bag was made of nylon fiber, with a rusty rivet embedded in the lid. It was one of the standard equipment in the army. It is generally used to store some small sundries and personal items for soldiers. Although the erosion seeds ate the remains, the small bag was left behind and scattered on the ground along with the tattered clothes. Kaylan picked up the small bag with the stalagmite. After confirming that there was no tissue contaminated with erosion seeds, he opened the lid of the bag and poured out all the contents. There aren't many things in the bag, just some small items. A copper, rusty arc contributor metal. The gold content of this thing is not high, almost the same as the third-class merit in the Chinese army in the old era, as long as it has successfully performed more than 3 field missions. Can be obtained. On the Ark, every veteran who has served for more than 5 years basically has one. But this thing at least proves that the members of this exploration team living on a desert island are experienced veterans, not the kind of rookies who don't understand anything. The second thing was 6 rivets with unique shapes. These rivets were so special that Kaylan recognized them at a glance. They were a type of heavy armor called Fearless Warrior used by Ark's early field troops. Accessories, but after the development of tactical exoskeletons and power armor, this thing was gradually eliminated. It seems that this team is equipped with at least one Fearless Warrior. This makes Kaylan feel strange. If it is a regular exploration mission, it must pursue high mobility. A Fearless Warrior like this is only suitable for positional warfare. The heavy armor units used in the extermination battle should not be deployed in an exploration team. Isn't this an exploration team? The third thing was a piece of chemical fiber fabric that was crumpled into a ball. It seemed to be cut from the lining of a piece of clothing. When Kaylan flattened the piece of fabric, he was immediately fascinated by the pattern painted on it. Attracted. This line, This is the coastline of this island. My current location. He raised his head and compared the pattern on the fabric with the coastline not far away. This is my current location. This is a map of this deserted island. It's just a pity that this map is not completely drawn. Except for the coastline, most of the areas are blank. Many of these blank areas are marked danger in bold and black fonts, danger. The only safe zone surrounded by these dangerous areas is the coastal area where Kaylan is located. Fortunately, I didn't go too deep into it rashly. Kaylan felt a little lucky in his heart. Even a fearless warrior would find it dangerous, so one can imagine how high the survival rate would be if he broke into it. In addition to these dangerous signs, there is also a place marked with a 5-pointed star. However, the place marked with the 5-pointed star is not on this desert island, but about a few meters away from the coast. About 50 meters into the sea. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 87. Since this place is marked with a star, it must be a very important place for this team, but why is it in the sea? Judging from the relics of these two soldiers, Kaylan did not find any diving equipment. If they want to reach the star position, they must first solve the problem of poisonous water and radiation, to say the least. Even if they are fearless, the soldiers' armor is waterproof and radiation-proof. The key is that this thing is not equipped with airbags and propellers. If it is thrown into the sea, it will sink directly to the bottom, and it will be of no use at all. Wait a minute, sink to the bottom? Ian's eyes swept over the dark sea. The surface of the water near the coast was exactly the same, and there was nothing special about it. Even the location of the star point was the same. But the same conditions on the sea surface do not mean that the conditions on the seabed are also the same, so, the star point on this map probably refers to the seabed rather than the sea surface. 50 meters away from the coast, it should still be within the scope of the continental shelf, and the depth should not be too deep. Even without diving equipment, as long as the protection measures are appropriate, you can dive to the bottom of the star point with bare hands. Since the word danger is not written on this star point, it means that this place should be relatively safe, but I don't know what is there. After packing these things, Kaylan returned to the beach where he woke up. The deep diving suit is still on the beach. After such a degree of ravage, although the thrusters and other equipment have been scrapped, the deep diving suit itself is still not damaged. Military-grade equipment may not have the same function. Those similar civilian products are very flashy, but when it comes to pistachio grass, they are definitely better than most civilian products. Otherwise, the things that flowed out of the army would not be extorted to sky-high prices on the black market. In this era, military supplies are almost equated with good things. Kaylan once again put on the heavy deep diving suit. After checking the air tightness, he walked step by step towards the star point on the map. On the beach, Kaylan had to mobilize all the muscles in his body to exert force every time he raised his legs. After walking a few dozen steps, his physical strength was exhausted. Fortunately, after entering the water, buoyancy helped him offset part of the weight of the equipment, which made him feel a little more relaxed. It should be, almost at this location. At this location, the water depth was only about 3 meters, but the visibility was surprisingly poor. In addition, the searchlight was broken, so Kaylan could only use the faint light cast from the water to carefully explore. This is still part of the beach. There is a layer of fine sand under the feet. The terrain is flat. There are neither reefs nor any aquatic life. Just like on the sea, there is nothing here. Isn't this map no longer timely? Kaylan was a little worried. If the star points on the map had something that could help him leave this desert island, would it be possible for the SEAL team to survive? Has the person escaped with the help of the things here? Just leaving such an outdated map that has been obsolete? This possibility cannot be ruled out. Just when Kaylan thought he was unlucky and decided to give up the search, his foot suddenly stepped on something empty, and his whole body suddenly fell down and slipped into a hole. Under the sand, it turned out to be there is a secret passage hidden. No need to think too much, the star on the map must be pointing to this passage. Kaylan, who fell to the bottom of the channel in one breath, turned on the flashlight and looked around. This was an L-shaped channel, and the entire channel was filled with sea water. He had just stepped from the vertical direction of the L, the part that had slipped down, and what appeared in front of him now was the horizontal part of the L. The walls of the passage on both sides are very smooth. It is difficult to tell whether it is naturally formed or excavated manually. However, there is a mark at the connection between the vertical passage and the horizontal passage, a steel nail driven into the rock formation. The cap of the steel nail has an etched five-pointed star logo. It seems that we have found the right place. Kaylan pointed the flashlight deep into the channel. This flashlight uses a lithium battery, and its brightness and penetrating power are not comparable to the searchlight on the deep diving suit. For example, in this passage without any external light source, Kaylan's field of vision is only about 5 meters. If there is a corrosive seed hidden in this passage, I am afraid that its tentacles will pierce Kaylan's heart before Kaylan can even see it. It is true that this is not marked as a dangerous area on the map, but just because it was safe decades ago does not mean that it is still safe now. The resurrected erosion seed just now is a good example. Holding a flashlight in one hand and holding the stalagmite in front of him with the other, Kaylan walked forward slowly. Fortunately, there was nothing in this passage except sea water. After walking forward for hundreds of meters, the passage began to have an upward slope. Climbing up this slope, Kaylan didn't go far. It's out of the water. What appeared in front of him was a huge underwater cave. He now realizes that he has made a very elementary mistake. Although the possibility of underground water existing on this dry desert island is extremely low, from a certain perspective, the sea water that invades the rock formation is also a type of groundwater. This submarine cave was eroded by sea water. Again, it turns out that the cave is here. Kaylan glanced at the stalactites hanging on the top of the cave. If these stalactites have the same effect as the stalagmites in his hands, wouldn't this place be a place specially designed to deal with erosion? A super arsenal of seeds. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 88. No wonder the people in that team marked this place with a star. If there is a seed of erosion on this desert island, then this cave is the only safe zone. Not only that, if these stalactites are used to process weapons, such as polishing them into warheads, then anyone, even a child, can use them at a safe distance as long as he can aim and pull the trigger. Easily deal with an erosion seed. Even if the seed of corrosion cannot be completely killed, it can at least be brought back to its previous state of suspended animation. It's a pity that Kaylan doesn't have the tools at hand now. Otherwise, as long as he can process dozens of rounds of these bullets, he would even dare to take the initiative to find the corrosive seed in a duel. But what makes Kaylan a little strange is that these stalactites are quite well preserved, with no traces of being mined at all. If this kind of thing is really effective against erosion seeds, Ark's top brass will never treat it like this. It doesn't make sense that a valuable resource was abandoned on this deserted island, and that it remained untouched for decades. Could it be that this team was wiped out in the end and failed to send the news back? Or is there another secret? Taking off his deep diving suit, Kaylan began to walk towards the depths of the cave. These things cannot be concluded by just guessing. He currently has too few clues about this desert island and this mysterious island. The team, about what happened here decades ago, everything is still shrouded in heavy fog, and what he can see is just the tip of the iceberg above the water. It would be great if we could find more bodies of other people in this team. It would be best if we could find their captain. He must have a complete mission record on his body. Kaylan thought this way and lowered his head to avoid a stalactite that was about to form a stone pillar. But when he raised his head again, he directly hit a pair of black eye sockets. Damn, Kaylan was stunned for 2 seconds before he realized that it was a skeleton leaning on the rock wall. "I almost died of being scared to death by you, my old friend." He shined the light of the flashlight on the skeleton. There was no doubt that the deceased belonged to the same team as the 2 mummies on the ground, but due to the environment, the clothes on it were almost rotten, and it can also be distinguished that this is a very old army combat training uniform. Over the past few decades, even the strong nylon fabric has softened. Kaylan just pulled it gently, and the satchel hanging on the skeleton's waist was torn directly, and everything inside fell to the ground. Land. 2 signal flares that had been damaged by moisture, a rusty multifunctional folding saber, a magnesium rod used to light fires in the wild, and 2 condoms that had not yet been opened. Kaylan checked all these things carefully, but what made him feel a little regretful was that there was no valuable information left on them, except for the name engraved on the side of the folding saber. Connolly. Kaylan glanced at the skeleton. This Connolly should have been his last name during his lifetime. Although Kaylan found nothing on these relics, when Kaylan focused on Connolly's sternum, his expression changed. "Hey, could this be?" There are obvious traces of fractures in Connolly's ribs on the left chest, but the angle of the fracture is opposite to the common traumatic fracture. It is bent outwards, and the spine is also deformed to a certain extent. As for the sternum, it is no longer he flew away, it looked as if a huge foreign object was forcefully stuffed into his chest, splitting his entire chest. Kaylan couldn't help but think of the huge heart in the second corpse. That heart almost occupied the entire chest of the corpse, and inside that heart, wrapped was the core of the seed of corrosion. It seems that this Connolly was also parasitized by the seed of corrosion. Judging from the damage to the bones, the seed of corrosion in his body should not have been removed artificially, but seemed to have burst out of his chest and voluntarily given up on the host. Why does it feel like the plot in Alien? Kaylan took a deep breath, but judging from the performance of the aliens in the movie, the erosion seeds are obviously much stronger than the terrifying creatures invented by the screenwriters. The seed of erosion voluntarily gave up its host. It seems to have something to do with the environment of this cave. It must have felt a fatal threat. Kaylan gestured at the volume of Connolly's chest with his finger. The seed of erosion's the core is at least twice as large as the one in the second remains. In other words, there must be more than one erosion seed on this desert island. Isn't this island a breeding ground used by the alphas to cultivate erosion seeds? The corners of Ian's mouth couldn't help but twitch slightly, thinking of the hatchery in the abyss and the one sealed in the glacier. Those pieces of meat, the alpha people seem to be particularly keen on cultivating monsters, but why do they do this? Is it true, as what is said on the stone tablet, that they are trying to create powerful enough warriors for that true god? The height of the alpha civilization is already unmatched by humans. So what level of civilization is the god in the eyes of the alpha people? A chill suddenly rushed down Ian's back. He suddenly thought of the fungus culture experiments he had done in school. For the fungi on those petri dishes, that piece of culture medium was already the entire world. They will not understand the existence of humans, just as humans cannot understand the existence of higher civilizations. Humans only need to sprinkle a few drops of inactivator in a petri dish to destroy their entire world. I'm going to think about what these things are for. Kaylan shook his head hard. It's better to find a way to escape from this ghost place first. Ian's plan was very clear. First, he had to survive. Only by surviving would he have the chance to wait for rescue, otherwise everything would be empty talk. In view of the fact that there may be multiple types of erosion on the island, if he wants to protect himself, he must rely on these strange stalactites, although he does not know what is strange about these stalactites. Secondly, he had to find a way to continue tracing the clues of this team, since they came to this place decades ago. Then by working backwards from the path they came from, Kaylan might be able to know the way to leave here. Third, judging from the stalactites nailed to the second remains, These people obviously know something about the seed of erosion and its restraint methods. If the solution to the seed of erosion can be found from the clues they left, with the method of cell invasion, Ian's original purpose of this operation has been achieved, and they no longer need to risk going to the bottom of the sea to find those damn flesh-eating worms. Fourth, if these people have any usable means of transportation left behind, then for Kaylan, it would be like winning the jackpot. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 89. Before the crystallized energy of the Alpha civilization became popular, in order to increase the movement radius of combat troops, the early long-distance vehicles equipped by the army were all nuclear-powered. A 30-centimeter long, finger-thick A1 fuel rod. It is enough to run a Class C miniature nuclear reactor for 6 months, and the energy it produces can enable a heavy armored vehicle to circle Alpha Star along the equator for a full circle and a half. If it weren't for the fact that there are no abundant uranium ores and thorium ores on Alpha, crystallized energy would not have the chance to become the primary energy source for mankind. After all, humans have not yet mastered the production technology of energy crystals, and the crystallization output depends entirely on the discovery of Alpha. Civilization relics always give people a sense of crisis of being controlled by others. Fortunately, the number of energy crystals left by Alpha civilization is extremely large. With the joint efforts of ruin hunters and exploration troops, the output of crystals has been very stable, which has prevented mankind from falling into an energy crisis again. If this team can leave some vehicles that use nuclear energy, with only a small fuel rod, Kaylan will have a chance to return to the human world. You must know that there are fearless warriors among them, the kind who wear heavy. The big armored man must be equipped with a vehicle if he wants to carry out long-distance combat. There is only one possibility that Ian's wish will be frustrated, and that is that this team will be airdropped directly onto this desert island. But this possibility is unlikely. If it was directly airdropped, it proves that the ARC senior officials must know the existence of this desert island. Even if they did not discover the cave at the beginning, after the team lost contact, it is fully capable of sending a search and rescue team here, and this map will not fall into Ian's hands at all. Judging from various signs, Kaylan should be the first person to come to this desert island after them. After passing Connolly's bones, Kaylan walked deeper into the cave, but before going far, he found more bones. This is a temporary camping site. The outermost perimeter is a guardrail made of folded alloy plates. 2 collapsed marching tents are spread out on the ground in the center of the camp. Next to it is a bonfire pit that has been extinguished for decades. More than a dozen skeletons surrounded the campfire pit. It seemed that this should be the final resting place for most of the team. Several pistols fell beside them, but there were no signs of fighting at the scene. Judging from the distribution of bullet casings and bullets, as well as the wounds on the bones, they should have committed suicide. Kaylan opened one of the tents, and inside there were several boxes of supplies, including food, drinking water, ammunition, and medicine. Based on the number of remains, these things could last them at least a month. If you plan more carefully, 2 months may not be a problem. What is the reason that makes all members of this team choose to commit suicide before they are in desperate situation? Why don't they think of a way to escape from here, or try to get in touch with ARC? Or should I say, they have already done all these things. Kaylan walked back to the middle of the pile of bones. He bent down and picked out a black metal box from the pile of bones. Black box is another name for flight recorder, which is used to save the flight data of the aircraft and the driver's voice record. In the ARC combat team, the commander of each unit also has something called a black box. This black metal box is essentially a specially encrypted recording device used to record the team's activities outside. The entire operational process during combat operations. The commander is responsible for recording the content of the black box. If the commander is killed in action, the person who takes over the commander's duties will take over the subsequent recording task. When the operation is over and the commander returns to the Ark to debrief his duties, the black box brought back will be there are dedicated personnel to decrypt and archive the content. If this unit is completely wiped out, or if the black box is accidentally lost during a combat mission, Ark senior management will send an elite team to perform the recovery mission. This shows the importance of the black box. I hope this thing isn't broken. Generally speaking, the security and reliability of black boxes are extremely high, but this thing has been abandoned in this damn place for so many years, and K-LAN dare not guarantee that the data inside is still safe and sound. K-LAN laid the black box flat on the ground and gently turned on the switch on the right side. Hiss, hiss. After a noisy electric sound, all three indicator lights on the side of the black box lit up. Fortunately, nothing is broken. K-LAN just breathed a sigh of relief. The next second, the three indicator lights turned from green to red. At the same time, a mechanized female voice came from the box. Reading this record requires a level or above authority. If there is no authority proof, please enter the password code. Oops, why did you forget this? K-LAN sighed inwardly. In order to keep it secret, even if ordinary people picked up the black box, they would not be able to extract the contents inside. As for violent cracking, it is even more impossible. The encryption program of the black box was written by the mastermind of Ark. If it were just a simple recording device, it could be made smaller than a fingernail. The reason why the black box is so large is entirely due to this encryption program. Please enter the password. If the correct password is not entered within 5 seconds, the device will lock itself. 5, 4. Password, what on earth could this damn password be? K-LAN scratched his hair a little irritably. There were only two ways to crack the black box. One was to connect it to a computer and use Class A. The key with the above permissions will copy the data inside, and one is to enter the password code set by the recorder. But K-LAN neither has an authority key above level A, nor does he even know what the password of this black box is. If it is really locked, then only the mastermind of Ark can unlock this thing. 3-2. Leave the bed. This string of English suddenly floated through K-Ian's head, and he read it directly without thinking too much. It's too late anyway, it's a dead horse but a living thing. The password is correct. Damn it, this dead horse was really revived by medical treatment? This warning is actually the password code for this black box? But, if this sentence is a password code, why does it appear on the inner wall of the spherical diving chamber? The two events are decades apart in time. His, July 11th, weather, overcast, 776 Special Forces Team, Commander, Ken. A thick male voice with an accent sounded, interrupting K-Ian's thoughts. It's been 4 days since we came to this place. Hearing this sentence, K-LAN was a little frustrated. This record was obviously not complete. The part he wanted to know most was how this team got here, but the beginning of the recording already said the 4th day. Yes. This place is very strange, it's really strange. It's been 4 days, although everyone else's electronic watches are broken, I have a mechanical watch. I can confirm that the hour hand has rotated 8 times, but in this place, time seems to stop flowing. July 12th, maybe July 12th, the weather has always been cloudy. There is no night here, but it doesn't feel like daylight, time seems to always be fixed at noon. Connolly said that we might be on an island in Zonghai, but I think he is talking nonsense. Zonghai is on the other side of Alpha Planet. Even if you fly on an empty ship, you have to fly for several days. But, except for the Middle Sea, there seems to be no water body of this size on Alpha Planet. There are no living creatures on the beach, and there is no wind. The environmental radiation concentration is very high. Fortunately, We have protective clothing and enough anti-radiation drugs. The adjutant suggested that I collect everyone's supplies and manage them in a unified way. I think he is right. July 13th, still cloudy, 776 Special Forces team. On the sixth day, Gino and Gary, who went to explore the Gobi Desert, still haven't come back. It's been 3 days. I thought they might be in trouble, but no one saw the flare, so I decided to organize a second group of people to find them. Carl set off with 6 people. These 6 people are all good people. I think they can get Gino and Gary back, even if it's 2 corpses, they have to bring them back. The kid transferred from the first reconnaissance company is very annoying, but I have to say that he has some unique abilities. He found an egg, a transparent egg. It turns out that in addition to sand and stones, this place also contains there's something else. That egg, damn it. Martin, throw away the egg. Fire. Everyone fire. On July 15th, in 2 days, we lost 17 soldiers. The egg came to life, and it got into Martin's stomach, and then, Martin turned into a monster, a head full of blood all over his body. It's a tentacled monster, it's invulnerable, an .50 caliber heavy machine gun can only repel it without causing substantial damage. Those tentacles swept away all the corpses, and it looked like a kind of hunting behavior. The reason why we can survive may be that that thing can't digest so much food for a while. On July 16th, we encountered that thing again. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 90. Kaylan knew that the transparent egg they found was actually the core of an erosion seed. The core is the body of the erosion seed. An erosion seed will only have one core, and their way of reproduction is by invading other organisms, assimilating their cells, and then generating a brand new one in the host's body. Nuclear to complete, but what makes Kaylan a little confused is why the 776 special team encountered a core that seemed to be completely harmless instead of a complete corrosive seed. If it was the latter, things wouldn't have happened so suddenly, and the team's losses might have been reduced a lot. Is this a hibernation mode similar to suspended animation? Or is it a form of trap used to trap prey? Kaylan wasn't sure. The recording continues to play. Our weapons cannot cause effective damage to this monster at all, and we can only rely on the heavy machine guns of the fearless warriors to restrict its movements. 4 more people died, Samuel died, and we lost the only fearless warrior, as well as Joseph and Danny. Moriyama, who always spoke with a Japanese accent, couldn't survive. The tentacle pierced his lungs directly. We don't have time to bury them, we can only run along the coastline. The monster didn't catch up, we are safe for now. The cape directly in front of us looks like an eagle's beak. Connolly said it would be better to name this place the Eagle's Beak. We are now about 50 meters away from the Eagle's Beak. Damn it, there is no north or south in this damn place. Point to north. The needle is spinning crazily, and the sun is always hanging directly above the head. Hearing this, Kaylan recalled the beach where he woke up. There did not seem to be such a Cape Eagle on the coastline within sight. From this point of view, the 776 Special Forces team should be at the other end of the deserted island. Seeds of erosion encountered. July 20th, I began to suspect that we may have entered a, how should I say, an abnormal space. This place is like a cage, a prison. It may be for that it was prepared by a monster, and we, the people, are the bait for that monster. Sergeant Collins proposed leaving here by sea. He thought it would be impossible for the rescue force to find the island. To be honest, I must admit that he was right. We fixed the 2 inflatable kayaks together, clamped the armor plates into paddles, and mounted them on the motor, but a fatal problem faced us. The material of the kayaks could not withstand the long-term exposure to sea water. Corrosion, there's a good chance we'll sink directly to the bottom of the sea on the way. Connolly thought it was a suicidal act and he had a row with the sergeant. Everyone is in a very low mood, including myself. Immediately afterwards, there was another long series of electric noises, which seemed to be mixed with some gunshots and explosions that sounded far away. Suddenly, the voice of the previous commander sounded again, with a rather excited tone. "We found a rock well. The walls of this rock well are very smooth. It is definitely not naturally formed. It should be a legacy of the Alpha civilization. Of course, these are not important. The important thing is, we found that the monster seems to be very afraid of this rock well, and it doesn't dare to approach it at all. I don't know what is under the rock well. Maybe it is the natural enemy of that monster, a more terrifying creature, but in any case, this is our only chance. We have lost 2/3 of our people, and none of the people sent to the desert came back, so I gave the order to have everyone else get into the rock well." Ay. Kaylan was slightly stunned. Could it be that the rock well they mentioned was another exit of the cave? If this is correct, then the formation of this cave is probably inseparable from the Alpha people. Below the rock well is a passage reinforced with alloy materials. Walk along the passage. A burst of exclamations suddenly appeared in the recording. This is. The Alphas are building a huge basement underground on this desert island. I don't know what the use of these things is. This may be a chemical plant, or maybe a laboratory or something like that. There are many quartz jars more than 10 meters high, filled with turbid liquid. There are also many metal brackets with shackles and other things attached to them, which look like, well, a torture device. Chemical plant? Laboratory. Kaylan lightly bit the nail of his thumb. According to the description of the commander of the 776 Special Forces team, this underground space may indeed be a laboratory left by the Alpha people. As for the function of this laboratory is 100% related to the erosion seed. The Alpha people have been conducting some extremely dangerous biological experiments. Kaylan knows this, especially this thing called the seed of corrosion. If he remembers correctly, it should be the 49,6th the creation produced by 166 transformation experiments. To conduct such a large-scale experiment, you will definitely need enough venues, and this desert island should be one of them. P.S. Regarding the black box, in the previous chapter, a reader mentioned that the black box on the airplane should be orange. In order to be eye-catching and easy to find and easy to recycle, this is indeed the case, but the black box I have here has an extended meaning, and it is the same as the black box on the airplane. The black box is not the same thing. It is mainly used to indicate that this thing is a confidential action file, so a more serious black color was chosen. In addition, in terms of recovery, the black box itself has a high-power signal transmitting device, so it is not that important whether the color is eye-catching. After all, Alpha Planet is vast and sparsely populated, and it is almost impossible for the recovery team to visually search for something the size of a palm. If it is painted bright orange, it will be easily mistaken for some kind of food by indigenous creatures and swallowed. P.S. About the development of weapon technology on the Ark. Before the Ark arrived on Alpha Star, the development of individual weapons was almost at a standstill. Firstly, it was to save as much manpower and material resources as possible for the long-distance voyage of the Ark. Secondly, the weapons of the old era were fully sufficient. The needs of the military. In previous voyages, humans have never experienced external combat, and in the case of internal combat, such as suppressing rebellions, public security, etc., the power of weapons from the old era is completely sufficient. It was not until the discovery of Alpha Planet that the shortcomings of individual weapons were exposed, and ARC began to invest resources and scientific research in this aspect. Therefore, the equipment configuration of the 776 Special Forces team is basically the same as that of the old era. P.P.P.S. I forgot to mention it before. The reader group number is 564747351. The password to join the group is the name of the protagonist. It can be the protagonist in any of my books. There are people who like to discuss plot settings or chat and gossip. Friends can join a group.